Good morning and welcome to Kelly's Anesthesia Tips. I have to admit I'm just a little bit excited about doing this one because it is such an interesting topic, and I really enjoyed watching this court case from December the 5th, 2024. So I'm going to share these links, and then I'm going to explain why, some of the information they gave was right, some of the information they gave was wrong, but not everybody speaks anesthesia, but we speak anesthesia, and I want to go through some of this. I made some notes, so I may be looking down or checking things, but I brought up all of the resources that they discussed, and I'm going to share them with you. So just in a nutshell, Nicole O'Neill is a CRNA, and she had I'm going to say billing company, PST Services, that was not properly reporting, allegedly. I'm not going to get into right, wrong, or any of that stuff here. I'm just going to give resources, rules, thoughts, and the actual resources they should have been relying on for this. So anyway, point being, there is some confusion to anesthesia coding, billing, modifiers, and I don't care how long you've been doing this. I still look up things. Before I start any audit, I work on what are the rules in this geographical location, because that's all you have to worry about, really. You have to worry about what are the billing rules here. And if there are none, many of us will lean back on those Medicare CMS guidelines, because at least they are clear about that. And I am going to share all of these resources. I honestly don't know how long this one's going to be, so if it takes longer than the 15 minutes that I usually try to allot to these, I'm sorry, watch it in pieces. But here I'm going to start working on this now. So I jotted down some notes. This one I'm not even going to play, but I am going to link on the YouTube so you can watch it if you would like. I said when I shared this resource, I was impressed with the judge in the middle. I don't know which one he is, but he asked some very pointed and good questions. And I mean, the other two judges were listening intently and asked a few questions here and there, but that middle one, he really seemed to be getting this and having, thoughtful responses of why wouldn't you do this or that. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I had two people ask me questions about this same scenario, and then I'm familiar with this case a bit because I've been trying to follow it for a couple of years now. It's still not settled. It's under appeal right now, and you'll notice that this was recent, within the past 5 months. This means it's been going on since 2023. And I don't mention this much, but when I was in high school, I worked at an attorney's office. So I do know things about, this is the year that they started the litigation and, the circuit court things and all of that good stuff. All right, so first I'm going to pop over. We're going to do a lot of popping too, sorry. I'm going to pop over to something that I made, which is a Word document of my two people who ask anonymous questions. Anonymous people who ask questions. So the first one is a billing company. So the billing company has an Ohio client who bills their CAAs, that's an anesthesia assistant, not a certified registered nurse anesthetist, there's a difference, as they bill their CAA with an AD and a QX when they don't meet medical direction, and they asked if that was okay. So I gave them a resource, and I'm not going to read all of this to you. I'm also not going to put these questions on there either. I think I even might have had some more responses to this that I didn't save with it, but I'll explain because I know what I'm trying to, get across when I'm providing these resources, because this isn't opinion for me. this is, I have some facts about what you're supposed to do. Will it be specifically for that carrier? I don't know. The case is in California. This question was in Ohio, but I do have resources to share. So let's start here. So it says, I'm curious to know what other practices do that employ the PAs, which they mean the CAAs, I believe. That's a physician's assistant. This is a certified anesthesia assistant. Technically, a physician's assistant is not the same as a CAA, and I'm not sure if that's what they meant, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to share those modifier descriptions with you as well, again, and the resources. So these aren't my opinions. These are facts. This is a court of law, and a court of law relies on facts. And I did look up both of the things that they referenced during their discussion. So I have my note about the people who asked the questions. And the court case basically is, was it fraudulent to report QZ modifiers for particular types of cases when medical direction was not met? I don't know the entirety of it, but the judge said you would think that you're supposed to report QZ and AD based on the guidelines that they referenced, and I'll share those with you shortly. But that's not what you're supposed to do. And I agree with the judge that it kind of sounds like that's what they're saying. And if you were at the Decision Health meeting, the very last in-person Decision Health meeting in Dallas, one of the sessions I was speaking, I don't mind sharing information, but I don't ever share clients, but I do. And most of us that are in the industry that are trying to help others will do the same thing, to say, no, I've seen practices that do this, but you don't want to do that. Or I've seen practices that were doing this and it worked, things like that. So this was a practice. I said in an unknown state, and then the person raised their hand and said, that was me. But I worked in a state, one of the 50 states, and they brought me a letter from CMS, their Medicare carrier for that, but it was Medicare. And in writing, they told them they needed to bill an AD and a QZ, because as the judge pointed out, it kind of makes sense to do that. But my point to them, and this is what I said to them, I said, I know you have it in writing, but it's not right. You're being paid extra to break the rules. So if you're not meeting medical direction, AD does not go with a QZ. You have a couple of options, but one of them isn't to report an AD modifier, which can pay up to 4 units, no time, but 4 units if the anesthesiologist was present at induction, which means not applicable to regional, not applicable to MAC, only applicable to general. For regional and MAC, you can get 3 units at the full price. And I'm just going to round it to $20, okay? Because that's about what Medicare pays in most states. Higher, lower, but around $20. So with a MAC or a regional, the most the anesthesiologist can collect for breaking medical direction or for having medical supervision, and this is why it's important to know specific guidance from your payers, is $60. That's 3 units times the rounding of $20, and that's all that they can get. Now, if there's a general case and they were present at induction, they could get 80. That's 4 times the 20 units. Now, the CRNA, on the other hand, or the CAA, or anesthesia assistant, they're still going to be able to collect their 50% of the full case plus time. It's the doctor who's penalized for not meeting those 7 services under medical direction. So I gave her the Noridian link that explains that if a physician is not able to perform all 7 services, they can use an AD and a QS. QX. I don't re-record because I mispronounced something, so that's the QX. And again, I'm going to share those modifiers with you if you're not as familiar with them. Now, does this rule follow all payers? No. There are plenty of payers out there that say you can bill the service with the QZ if not all 7 steps of medical direction are performed. But here's the catch. You cannot report a QZ for an anesthesia assistant because it's reserved for a CRNA. The QZ is reserved for a CRNA. I'll show you the modifiers. But a QX can be reported for the CAA because they're a non-physician provider. And that changed a few years back. Again, I'm going to give you the resource. So here we have, and then I also kind of showed them, I said, you know, AI has some pretty good information about this too. So AD, even if someone tells you to report an AD with the QZ and it's in writing from Medicare, you don't do it. You don't want to get that extra payment and then have to do payback because you should have known better. So that's kind of what the judge should have been explained to. And if I'm not mistaken, the female attorney did mention that, yeah, you know, that would overpay them for doing something for something they didn't do, and that doesn't make sense. So she got that too. Both of them spoke, both of the attorneys on both sides did their homework as far as explaining this, although they used the wrong resources. All right. So here, I'll give you like the AI stuff and the Noridian links in mine, but you'll understand. I'm not going to give you all the questions and all of that stuff here. So on the AD, it goes through, it gives the structure for CRNAs, when to use the AD, and just remembering might not be specific to all payers. Like Noridian is the one that says, if you break medical direction, you have to bill a AD with a QK. In Florida, if you don't meet all of the steps of medical direction, you can bill a QZ, but not for a CAA. I said it gets confusing, and it does, but you know, one step at a time and have anesthesia friends. So they had some pretty good resources here. I did not see where they had the ASA, the American Society of Anesthesia, as a resource. I did not see where they had CMS other than Palmetto GBA up here, but they didn't have the Noridian. They didn't have the federal regulations that the 2 attorneys mentioned as well. So now we're going to kind of pop over to some of those. What is clear here? AD does not go with a QZ. AD is married to QX. And a CRNA and a CAA can both use the QX. The CAA does not use the QZ. I will give an exception here, not for Medicare, because Medicare has already made it clear by their modifiers, and I'll show you. But if you have a contract with a private payer like, you know, United Healthcare, Cigna, Aetna, whatever, and they tell you this is what we want you to do, I say, and this follows Joanne Mamert's golden rule of he who has the gold makes the rules. So if you want to get paid for some of those payers, you have to follow their guidelines. All right, so those were the questions. These are the resources. I'm going to go back over to now my notes, because one of the first notes that I heard was 414.46. I jotted these down. They were confused, and it's understandable why. So here, one of the attorneys went to this. This is Code of Federal Regulations, CFR. That's what that stands for. The E up here that you see in the resources, that's for electronic. Title 42, because the Lord knows we have enough rules for all of this stuff. One of my keys, and I've done a YouTube on it, is I use Control F function. So I just found the one he referred to pretty quickly. So this is the determinations of the payment amount, and this talks about how much they're paying. And then modifier units are not allowed. What they mean there is that Medicare does not pay for anything extra for either the physician or the CRNA for their health status, which we know as physical status, modifiers, risk, age, which we know as qualifying circumstances, or unusual circumstances, which we know as like field avoidance or things like that. So this wasn't actually the right section for the attorney to refer to. So one of the other attorneys referred to this one. Code of Federal Regulations again, Title 42, 414.60, payment for the services of CRNAs. And you notice here, all of this does say CRNAs, not physician, and not certified anesthesia assistants. What do we know about modifiers? Your modifiers are supposed to explain who was involved with that case. So we want them to be accurate. I went to a totally different resource because we've got our CMS transmittal back when they changed the wording, but I wanted to show you this because there were sections back in 2013, so it's been a minute, where they replaced the term CRNA or replaced qualified non-physician anesthetist with CRNA, so that they try to make it perfectly clear about what you can do and what you can't do. So down here, I'm going to scroll here. Let's use my Control F to the QZ section. I had it up there. And we have our billing modifiers that were last changed in 2013. And you see clearly that QZ says CRNA without medical direction by a physician. So we can't use that for our CAAs, exception I mentioned. Here, it doesn't say CRNA. It says qualified non-physician anesthetist. There may even be some controversy going on about who uses what terms, etc., or whatever. We know we need to bill with the right modifiers. So whether it is a non-medically directed CRNA, you use the QZ. For a non-medically directed CAA, you don't get to use the QZ. Does that penalize you? With some payers, yes. All right, so I said I would give you the legitimate resources of where these come from, but I want to make an aside here because, you know, I've noticed from doing this for so long that sometimes there are small adjustments in the descriptions of these modifiers depending on what resource you're looking at. So some of them have slightly different verbiage, but I'm going to use what I know as legitimate resources, which is CMS. And I'm also going to use the ASA. So here for the American Society of Anesthesiologists, they also do the same thing here. So QZ, and they use their source. Their source says of 2019, so they're going under probably, I don't know what year this was, but the chapter 12 may have a more up-to-date, and I can hop over and look at that, I just didn't pull it up. So chapter 12, section 50 is the anesthesia section for us. I have links on my website if you're not familiar with it. I'll link it here as well. But the resources show CRNA services without medical direction by a physician, again, not for use by a CAA. And then we have the ones that are left. The only one that is left for a CAA is QX. And you may have noticed that a physician even has a Q modifier. But this one is reserved for those times when an anesthesiologist is medically directing just one, either CRNA or CAA. It happens from time to time, and your concurrency reports, hopefully you run them, help you figure those out when they're one-to-one. It shouldn't happen a lot because if two providers are needed on one case and they're both fully involved with that, there's an exception in this section of the Medicare Claims Processing Manual that says they will pay both of them. So, you know, just understanding all of these different rules is incredibly important. Now I want to check my notes just to make sure that I hit on everything that I know I wanted to hit on. So the judge said you would think QZ and AD based on the guidelines. So in what world would providing less service get more payment? He understood that, and it's not. You don't get extra payment. They explained the rest very well. I believe they did even refer to the Noridian and said there might be times when you don't use the QZ. And then let me see if there's anything else. Billing supervised as if a CRNA independent. Oh, that was part of the issue, I think, is that they were failing to disclose the MD's involvement. So that was part of the issue. So again, I think the most important thing here is to make sure that you're following your local carrier guidance. I think that was one of my responses. If I did not put my response in there, let's see if I did. I said best practice is to research all applicable payer policies to see if they require that you report medical supervision, because in the long run, that medical supervision does cost your practice, especially if they're long cases, because you get absolutely no time. All right, guys, I will leave that up. I think I hit all my notes. I love this kind of stuff. I really do. Not the confusing part of it, but that, you know, people have to have understanding of how things are done, or you end up in court. Do I know how it's going to resolve? I don't. I will keep an eye on it because to me it's interesting. But I do like to help people out. So hopefully you're going to be able to attend an anesthesia meeting somewhere, sometime. There are several coming up. On my website, which I always link, I have everyone that I know about. I've said if you have local ones for your AAPC chapters, I'm happy to add them. A couple of times people have sent them and asked me to, and I do. I will be happy to share any anesthesia education resource that's out there. So the ones coming up. Next one is AIA BPM in Orlando. Great sessions. I just posted a lot of stuff this morning saying boot camp every year is so well worth it. I attended, and I would still attend. Even if I wasn't speaking, I would attend, just because you hear other people's perspectives. You hear up-to-date information. You have an opportunity to ask questions and interact and see how things are doing. And you'd be amazed sometimes at some of the things people are told to do or not do. It just is always interesting. After that one is the Florida Anesthesia Administrators Association. We have doctor members, we have coder biller members, we have administrator members, we have consultant members, we have out-of-state members. Yay! Because they're helping us keep that Florida Association alive when some of the other states have not been able to do that. We've talked a little bit about maybe trying to make hubs, you know, for other states where we can help each other out, because we all need it. We need this, you know, the area to talk to each other about things like this. That one's in June. Again, I have it on my website. And then the last opportunity that I know of this year will be a virtual through Decision Health in November. They'll do pain management, orthopedic, and anesthesia. And if you don't have the opportunity to travel, there's no excuse, none, for not having a network. There is anesthesia, coding and billing, Facebook. We interact with each other. There's, you know, an opportunity to do Zoom calls with some of the members, thanks to Pam Stouffer and Jill. And aside from that, ACE offers a quarterly Ask Us a Question. And many of us in the industry take questions through email. And you, if you're ASA members, or your physicians are, and as an administrator, you can be an ASA member if you follow, you know, certain guidelines for free, if you have the certain number of doctors who are being billed on a group practice. Otherwise, you can pay, and it's not that expensive, people. It's just not. To me, what's expensive is learning the hard way that you're doing things wrong and take a look sometimes at the multi-million dollar penalties that you have to pay, or these court cases are incredibly expensive. All right, I think I hit everything I needed to hit. One last plug, that if you're an ASA member, you can send a question through codinghelp@asahq.org. Just put your member number in the in the subject line. And if not, reach out to an anesthesia friend. And if you don't have one, I suggest that you get one. I have always offered to be available. The only caveat that I give you is I'm a one-person person. So when I'm busy, I will check email sometimes in the evening, sometimes at lunch. It just all depends. I do respond to everyone. If you're asking simple questions, I will answer and give you the resource as quickly as I can. If you're asking complex ones that need written, that need research and written, I may ask you to sign a contract. But other than that, yeah, I'm your anesthesia friend. So I will end with my anesthesia friend saying, which is be kind to one another and generous with your knowledge. Support anesthesia meetings. When I say if you don't, they'll go away, I mean it. And we need these meetings. We need the opportunity to network. We need the opportunity to learn. So hope to see you at one of the upcoming meetings. And I know I ran a little long, but have a good day.